Mike Madrid talks a lot about housing on this damn podcast because he's a nerd and he loves public policy and he loves good policy that can help elect people. And it's almost like Ruben was listening to the podcast because this morning, Senator Ruben Gallego, rolls out housing policy and how to smartly build 8 million new units across the country, affordable. He called it strong and sturdy so that they could, withstand floods and hurricanes, but then also getting rid of lots of red tape because it does no good to talk about building 8 million houses if it takes you 20 years to do it. If you watch his video on his Twitter feed, he talked directly about that. And I think that, he's positioning himself. You can kind of see now he has good people around him, but he's also talking to folks about what they care about. Mike, did you have a chance to what you call look at the shorthand of it? I know I just sent it to you early this morning.
Yeah, just so people know, like I get text from Chuck Rocha at 4:35 in the morning Pacific Coast time because he's up early. It's sending me, stuff I should be paying attention to. And I'm like, brother, you all should be writing me a check because this is straight out of Mike Madrid's book. This is what he's been saying for years and suddenly pops up.
It's coming. Don't worry. When he's the president, you're going to be an advisor with me, but you're going to get paid. I promise.
Yeah. Senator Ruben Gallego is brilliant. I'm like, yeah, 3 years ago, Mike Madrid was saying this Democratic Party needs to get its act together on housing. So look, I'm saying this because I'm a big fan of Senator Gallego, as you all know. He's probably the one U.S. politician I've got the most hope in. And I'm so glad he's doing this. Doesn't need to do this, but he's one advocating for the Latino community. That's what this is about. It's obviously for everybody from a policy perspective, but the community that is the most disproportionately impacted by housing are Latinos. And let me say this is what nobody's figured out yet. So give Chuck another tidbit here to go make a lot more money to do another.
Ooh, hang on, let me write it down. Let me get my pencil out. Now go.
You cannot solve the affordability crisis until you solve the housing crisis. Because when you're paying 40, 50% of your income on rent or a mortgage, you know what the price of everything else is. You know what the price of eggs is. You know what the price of gas is. You know what the price of your energy costs are to heat your home. So the problem is it's a long, slow slog, and there is tension in the Democratic base about this. There just is. The environmental community, the environmentalist guys, which is an overwhelmingly white constituency. Yes, I went there. Yes, I said it. Sorry, not sorry. Okay? This is a community that is not, that cares about Latinos far less than they care about their other priorities. And that is just quantifiable. This is the unholy coalition in the Democratic Party. Because 99 times out of 100, this community will do everything they can to stop the industry, the jobs, the housing, the purchasing, the anti-growth measures that allow for people to provide for themselves, their family, and economic mobility. Now, these two constituencies have been made up over the past 30 years, the coalition of the Democratic Party. Wealthy, white, progressive environmentalists that don't want any growth, that don't want any manufacturing, that don't want any of these quote-unquote dirty jobs. And then there's the younger, browner, Latino, less college-educated working men and women who, frankly, make a living off of those jobs. I'm looking at Chuck Rocha right now, who used to work on a tire plant in Texas. Okay? That's how we support our families broadly. The only thing that these two constituencies have had in common over the past 30 years is they've both hated Republicans for different reasons, but they've hated Republicans. That's not as much the case anymore. Now, this moment in time, it's pretty good, right? Like I said, I was predicting very early on, right after Donald Trump was elected, it's going to be a bad midterm for the Republicans. That doesn't take a genius. That's just history. But that does not mean they love Democrats. What Ruben Gallego is doing is he's providing an opportunity for them to love Democrats again. He's providing a pathway for Latinos to come back and say, they get it. They care about this stuff. They want to build homes. And as I pointed out, again, both in my book and on this show, 1 in 5 Latino men are employed in the construction industry or related field. We are the home building constituency. That's 20% of the Latino GDP is housing construction. And on the other side, we're the ones disproportionately affected by being able to buy a home. So housing policy, you don't have to say it's a Latino policy, but it is de facto. We build the homes and we need to buy the homes. How this is not central to the Democratic Party's plank is ridiculous to me. So I'm grateful to what Ruben's doing. We'll put a link to this article, by the way, in the show notes too. Love to get your comments, everybody, on housing and housing policy. You can say Mike Madrid's crazy if you want to. Good. Come at me. Because this is the fight I love to have with my white progressive Democrats. All day long, I will have this with you. You're talking to a guy that grew up in these circumstances, and I'm going to fight for poor people, and I'm going to fight for working class people, and I will fight against wealthy white people. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, but if you're going to pass policies that are going to hurt my community, you're going to get a bronca, brother. You're going to get a fight. And that is what gets me up every day. Like Chuck Rocha and a silverback.
Ooh-wee.
I will take all comers on this. And I'm glad that I'm, hip side with Ruben Gallego on this in the Senate, because this is a long overdue discussion that the Democratic parties need to have. This is a reckoning, a generational reckoning. We need to build millions of more housing units. You can't be pro-immigrant unless you're pro-housing. You can't be pro-worker unless you're pro-housing. You can't be pro-democracy unless you're pro-housing. You know why? You're 300% more likely to vote if you own a home as compared to rent it.
That's absolutely true.
So don't tell me that you're pro-democracy if you're not pro-housing first.
If you look at the video that Ruben put out, one of the things that he said, there's been a lot of housing stuff said over the years, but he looked at the camera, and to Mike Madrid's point, he said, the people building the house should be able to buy the house.
Yeah.
And you don't see that. People talk about the folks that are actually building homes. You hear about it abstractly. You hear about affordable housing. You hear about all the different government programs and whatever. There's a place for all of that. But to have somebody speak to the people that are building these homes should be able to live in these homes and afford to live in these homes.
Yeah. And brother, this is one of the great sins of the Democratic Party for the past 30 years. I'm talking about it in biblical terms. This is a sin. There's no reason why we are in this housing crisis other than we've got a supply problem ultimately. And that's a big part of Ruben's plan. That's the first plank, is saying we need more housing. This is particularly problematic in blue states. This isn't just Mike Madrid, crazy-ass right-wing Republicans saying this. This is Ezra Klein, like the progressive wing of the New York Times, saying California specifically doesn't work because Democrats don't know how to build housing anymore. And the truth of the matter is, let's be honest, let's be frank, they don't want to build housing. They don't want to build housing. The counties that don't build housing in California are the wealthiest, whitest, most progressive zip codes and counties in California.
You don't reckon they build a bunch of houses down in Santa Barbara?
They ain't building no houses in Santa Barbara, which is an important place, by the way, brother, because I want to talk about Monique Limon, the new Senate pro tem president.
Is she from there?
She's from Santa Barbara, brother. And look, I'm a huge fan. Just to bring everybody into the conversation with us. Monique Limon is a state senator here in California. She was just elected the first Senate pro tem, the first Latina Senate pro tem. For the first time in California history.
In the history of the state?
A history of the state, a Hispanic woman is going to lead the state Senate. And she's a remarkable person. I'm a big fan of hers. I've got very high hopes. But one of the challenges is she lives in Santa Barbara. She's from Santa Barbara. And she asked for coffee earlier last year. We sat down and had coffee, and she said, what can we do on this affordability thing for our community? I said, housing. And she said, it's so tough because she's from Santa Barbara. She's from a community that doesn't want to build anything. They don't want to build anything. And I'm like, that hurts our people. That doesn't, I'm not worried about the, lawyer making $500,000 a year that can't afford Santa Barbara. Like, I'm not worried about that guy. That guy can go fend for himself. I'm worried about the worker, the working class person who can't afford to house his family in a small rental unit in that county, Santa Barbara County. And so Monique Limon really represents both geographically in Santa Barbara, wealthy community, one of the wealthiest communities in the state, and this emergent blue-collar working class community. And she's uniquely positioned to reconcile these two coalitions within the Democratic Party. And it's going to be fascinating to watch her do it, but I am hopeful that, look, all politics is local. She knows where her voters are. She knows where her donors are. But she also, from our conversations, knows where her people are. She knows what the struggle is. She's like, Mike, I couldn't afford a house, my own house. My husband and I couldn't afford my own house until we were deep into our late 30s. And I was like, yeah, that's not good. I mean, she embodies all of these problems. So champion. We need a Latino, Latina champion to fight for our community on affordability, cost of living, and it all starts with housing. If you're not pro-housing, you're not pro-Latino.